Yom Paro Yosef Chalom Chalamti Fosei Noso. Paro said, I had a dream, and there's no one who's able to interpret the dream. And I've heard about you that you have that ability. Be attentive to the dream to interpret it. Now it's interesting. Now Yosef has his chance right now to what? To take credit for his ability. Here he's been rotting for 12 years in the dungeon. He's been seen as worthless. Now Paro says, I heard you have the ability. He's able to cash in on this. But what does he do? Now, Yosef was beyond genius. He knew exactly the way the Sarah Mashkim depicted him and described who he is to Paro. Nar Eved Ivri, as if he was there listening to the description he had given. So, meaning, as we discussed yesterday, the Sarah Mashkim did this for self-preservation. And Yosef understood exactly what a Sarah Mashkim was. And that's why he didn't immediately address his request. If that's the case, if I'm a savant, what am I going to say? It's true. Okay. So the moment you finish interpreting the dream, where you going? You're going back to the dungeon. Because you have no worth. Your worth is this. Beyond this, you have no worth. So what does Yosef say? It has nothing to do with me. That I have the ability has nothing to do with me. It's not, I'm gifted with a gift. Elokim Yanu Eshlom Paro. Elokim, God will respond to bring peace to Paro. It's because God is watching out for you. It has nothing to do, it's not I'm endowed with a certain ability and I just interpret dreams. At this moment, your request is because God will use me as the conduit to bring peace to Paro. Paro and Yosef Kolomi, Hine Obed Asfasayor. And now he starts describing the dreams. I'm just going to skip all of this. Skip to Chavches. Again, after he hears the dreams, earlier, Chavav. Sheva Aporos Hatov Sheva Shonim Heino. The 7 fat cows are 7 years. V'Sheva Shibola Hatova Sheva Shonim Heino. Hine Heino Chalom Echoru. The cows and the sheaves, it's all one dream. V'Sheva Aporos Harakos Varos Olos Achreyan. And the 7 cows, which are thin-fleshed and bad-looking, which immediately follow after them, Sheva Shonim Heino. V'Sheva Shibolam Harekos Shtufus Kodim, those that are empty with the kernels and they've been blown with an easterly wind, Yusheva Shnei Rov. Those are the 7 years of famine. Okay? Now it's interesting. When he spoke about the first 7 years, he said it's 7 years, the good-looking cows and the sheaves, but he doesn't say those are the years of plenty. Doesn't give a reading on that. The second, then he says, but the 7 years of the emaciated cows and the wind-blown sheaves, Shevish Shnei Rov. I mean, he should have, as he said Shevish Shnei Rov, he should have said, it's Shevish Shnei Sova. It's 7 years of plenty. Right? Why does he give the interpretation to the end of the statement rather than the beginning of the statement as he gave to the second? And listen, Hu Adava Shedibarti al Paro, Asher Elokim Ose Heres Paro. This is what I have spoken to Paro. What Elokim is doing, he's showing Paro, meaning this is your best interest. Now, when a person understands he has an impending problem, what does he do? And he has the ability to address it at the moment. He immediately understands that he has to be very careful because of that impending problem. So therefore, what does he tell him first? There's 7 bad years coming. He didn't describe how bad they are yet, but it's going to be famine. Right now, economically, Egypt's in a good place. It's not years of plenty, which will happen, which he's going to describe afterwards. but they're in a good place. So if 7 years of famine coming, and it's coming, therefore it's something which I really have to be attentive to. He wants to get Paro's attention. Therefore, although he presented for the first, he says it's 7 years and 7 years. It's the same dream, and the second is Sheva Shnei Rov. There's a problem coming down the pike. Once Paro hears there's a problem coming down the pike, now that starts resonating with him because he's responsible for his kingdom, for the whole civilization. Therefore, now when he says afterwards that 7 years of plenty, therefore he appreciates what you have to do with those years of plenty. You have to be very responsible, and that's what he gave the solution. We have to store away that grain for those years of famine. Then he goes to explain how extreme the famine is going to be. But the first thing he has to speak about what's coming down the pike. 7 years of famine. That's why he didn't first speak about the years of plenty. You're wealthy. Egypt is the most powerful, the most advanced civilization. You can become wealthier. Okay. It's not the end. It's not the end of the world. It's not going to make me or break me because I'm there already. But when you hear what now is not so simple. Because the years of famine coming, now you want to hear. Now when I tell you years of plenty, years of plenty take on a different degree of value because of that famine. What we are today is not enough. You need the plenty to assure and guarantee and secure who you're going to be. Now he introduces the second thing. 7 years are coming. There'll be not Sova Godol. There'll be a great degree of plenty throughout Egypt. The Kamu Sheva Shnei Rov Achrein. Then he says, and then 7 years of famine coming after them. And how extreme will that famine be? It'll be so extreme that people will not even have a recollection of that plenty. As great as the plenty is going to be, the famine is going to be so extreme, it's as if the plenty didn't precede the famine. And that famine will destroy the land. So what does he hear? How is he internalize this reality? The famine is going to be so extreme that so he understands, unless we're going to have a solution, it's the end of Egypt. Egypt will perish. And Paro understands the dream is on a prophetic level almost. And he goes to explain why will it be? It'll be so extreme. He says, Nishkach. To what degree will be forgotten? He's really putting the salt on the wounds here. He's saying it because it's going to be very extreme to the degree that the plenty won't even be known that it ever pre-existed it. Ki choved harov ma'od, because it's going to be a very, very difficult famine. Okay? It's not finished. And because the dream was reiterated twice, again, he's mentioning Elokim, it's in place from God. This is not just coincidental, and it's going to be expedited to do immediately. So Paro understands, being who he is, and understanding that this is the correct interpretation of the dream. Therefore, he understands he has a very serious problem, that his kingdom, unless the issue is addressed, it's coming to an end. And that's exactly what Yosef is communicating to Paro. And he wants it, he should fully appreciate the severity and the seriousness of the moment. That's exactly why Yosef is communicating in such a way. Now, initially, Yosef's talking to a pagan. The first he says, God will bring peace to Paro. He says Elokim. Now, where do you have the chutzpah, You have a pagan and you're trying to put your religion on somebody else. Yosef has no holdbacks. Yosef understands that God dictates his life, and because Yosef, he was called from the dungeon to interpret the dream, he has to say the way it is. There's no ifs or buts. To say it differently, he's off base. You speak to a pagan, doesn't make a difference. This is the reality. And then he says, he mentions it again now during the interpretation of dreams, he says, the reason why God brought it to you, because he wants to bring peace to Paro. Right? Psukim before. Chavches. Well, who adav shedibar par asher Elokim ose heres Paro. What the Elokim is doing, he's showing Paro. Now he says over here, now that the dream was repeated, ki nochen adav miyim Elokim. This is about to happen from Elokim. Umemar Elokim lasoso. He's very generous with Elokim. Everything is Elokim. And we'll see in a moment to what degree this impacted on him. This man who's the leader of the most advanced civilization, which we once mentioned, remember we mentioned him, Rabbeinu Bachya, what the monarch of Egypt is called Paro. What's Paro? So he explains, the Egyptians believed that the culture was founded that everything is rooted in physical. There's nothing outside of the physical existence. Everything is limited to the physical. There's no such thing as spiritual. That's what he believed. And Paro, the letters Ayin Peresh, those letters are contained within the title of the monarch. Paro is offer. Everything is earth. Everything is earthy. Now he's talking to a person who personifies this position, Elokim, Elokim, Elokim. He's telling them now, something outside of what you believe in is causing all this to happen. That's exactly what Yosef is telling Paro. And he says in one statement, Kinochan adov mi'im Elokim, it's ready to happen from Elokim, umemahayir Elokim lasoso, and that Elokim is expediting it to bring it about. And now he gives a solution. And Paro, being no ordinary person, understands the solution is considered the equivalent of divine genius. Because within a moment, he explained to him exactly how to deal with this issue, which will guarantee the survival of Egypt and put Egypt on top of the world, even to a greater degree, despite the famine. He says now means immediately. Paro should appoint a person who's novo and the chochem, insightful and wise. And he should oversee all Egypt. That one person should be the one who should be responsible for everything that goes on in Egypt. Not the king. The king himself, you don't have the capacity. There's one person, Yasef Paro, v'yafkik pekidim aloretz. Paro should appoint appointees throughout the land. It means representatives, and you can have one person overseeing all these representatives. And you're going to divide the land during the years of plenty. That this be responsibility. This is in terms of gathering the grain and storing it away. Meaning, you should be put in a position where we're prepared to act responsibly. Over here, Rashi says, like v'chamushim. Zion doesn't mean take a fifth. It means it should be addressed with immediacy. V'chimesh means that with immediacy, this has to be addressed. V'yikbutzu kol oso ochel hashonim hatovus abos elo, and they should gather all the good years which are coming. V'yitzru bor, and they should gather grain tachas yad Paro. It should be under the auspices of Paro. Ocha borim yishamaru. Food in those cities, and it will keep, and it should be kept. And that food will be for safekeeping for the land, in preparation for the 7 years of famine, which will happen in Egypt. And as a result of that, the land will not be cut off, will not be consumed, will not be destroyed through the famine. This is the solution. Within moments, he gave him a solution how to deal with everything. Immediately, it found favor in the eyes of Paro and the eyes of all his subjects, meaning his inner circle. Now, look what he says. Paro is a pagan. He believes in deities. Yosef is his party line is Elokim, Elokim, Elokim. He was so affected, impacted, impressed with this, he bought into it. V'yome Paro el avodov. Hanimtsu kozeish asher ruach Elokimbo. Have we ever come upon a person, a man who the spirit of Elokim is within him? Meaning this is not human intelligence. This man is like a reincarnation of some spiritual, of God himself. God is talking through this person. He has the spirit of Elokim. Yosef succeeded by showing him that he's more than a savant. It's not him, he's only the conduit. The solution is beyond human intelligence. To be able to encompass and to address every aspect of this issue, and that the solution is ironclad, this is nothing less than divine genius. Paro says,
Rabbi, is there
wait, Alan, 1 second.
Yeah.
I didn't take vacation yet. When I go on vacation, then you have the floor is your floor. Okay. V'yoma Paro el avodov. Hanimtso kazeh ish asher ruach Elokimbo. Right? When we haven't finished. V'yoma Paro Yosef achre hodia Elokimoscho. After God informed you, again, he understands this is God is informing him. There's no one as brilliant, as insightful as you. Since God used you as the vessel to communicate this divine knowledge, that tells me there's no one who's your equivalent in Novon and Chacham. What does one thing have to do with another? You're a holy man. What's Novon and Chacham? What does that have to do with Navon and Chacham? What? Evidently, they're connected. I'll now let you talk. By the Mishkan, the Jews had to build a Mishkan. The level of artisanship, the level of professionalism, the level of experience they had to have to be able to develop what was needed, whether it was carpentry, whether it was weaving, whether it was dyeing, whether it was goldsmithing, whatever it was, and the precise precision of what the Mishkan was, even though they worked off a blueprint. The blueprint was Hashem's blueprint. But how do you go from a background of mortar and brick to a level of sophistication that there's nothing comparable to their ability? So the Torah says explicitly, "Ubalev kol chacham lev nosati chochma." That's what Torah says. In the heart of the chacham lev, I placed chochma. So the Gemara says in Brachos that the wise heart, a heart that contains chochma, Hashem adds chochma. The chokhmah there was divine chokhmah. It was a miracle. But to who does Hashem endow with chokhmah? The heart which previously contained chokhmah. Because it says, "Lev kol chacham lev nosati chokhmah." So the famous, it's a medrash, and the Balaturim brings it, but Rav Chaim Voloshin says it explicitly. So where does that chokhmah, where does the chacham lev? The chokhmah, the wisdom in the heart, where does it begin? Reishis chokhmah yiras Hashem. The person who had the fear of Hashem at that special level, to that greater capacity, that person was the vessel for the divine Chokhmah. Because you had that Reishis Chokhmah Yiras Hashem. God gives wisdom to those who are wise. God gives this exceptional understanding a person who has a capacity. So if you already have a capacity and you're actually meant to be in this area of development, Hashem endows you with that. Right? A person, God forbid, doesn't have a right arm or a left arm. God's not going to give him an opportunity to become a pitcher. Right? I got to speak Alan's language, right? Because he's not pitching with his leg, with his foot. He needs an arm. If he doesn't have arms, he's not. Person doesn't have that capacity to have relevance to Novon and Chocham. God doesn't endow him with that. Therefore, when Paro saw this divine wisdom, what does it say about who you are? Elokim endowed you because you have this capacity. There's no one who's Novo and Chochem like you are. That's how Paro recognized it.
All right.
speak about the new mandate when they were going to slave the Jews. It says, "V'yokom melech chodesh al Mitzrayim." A new king arose over Egypt. So there's an argument between Rav and Shmuel. What does melech chodesh mean? Does it mean the old king died and this was a new king? Because it says, "Asher lo yoda es Yosef," the new king who did not know Yosef. So there's not. What does it mean? Does it mean it truly was a new king? And it's not the same king as the original Paro? Well, no, it's the same Paro. He lived all these years, and he behaved as if he never knew Yosef. Meaning he had to somehow suppress the fact that why does Egypt exist as it exists? Because of Yosef. If that is in the forefront of your mind, with a good conscience, you can't behave this way. So you have to somehow suppress it, bury that fact, and only then could you behave this way to enslave his family. So that's an argument. Was it the same Paro? Was it not the same Paro? It's an argument, Rav and Shmuel. Yosef, did he behave as if he didn't know Yosef, or he truly didn't know Yosef? That's the argument. That's the first thing to address. The first question you asked. But since this has nothing with Maisa over Sim Labonim, nothing to do with it whatsoever. I mean, Yosef was sent there. We'll discuss when he has his children. What was the value of Yosef having those dreams? What was the point of him going to Egypt? We explained that Yosef is the flame, and he's an extension of his father. And he deals with certain things which the other brothers couldn't deal with, to address certain issues for the destiny of Klal Yisrael, for destiny. Yosef, the Torah tells us that before the famine happened, he had two sons. The first son he named Menashe. The second son he named Ephraim. What's the basis for the name Menashe? Later in the parsha, it tells us because he said, God caused me to forget all the angst and all the trauma I had, and he allowed me to forget my family. It's as if my family doesn't exist. I mean, is that a basis? I mean, there was nobody closer to his father than himself. Is that a basis? Is that a reason to give a name to a child? And that's his Bechor. That's in the forefront. The Bechor is always what's first and foremost, which is resonating with you and touching you more than anything else. What's the basis? Now, Yosef understood he had a mission. What was his mission? His mission was to provide for the Klal Yisrael, to prepare him for this long stay, a 210-year stay in Egypt. And he has to settle them and has to appropriately prepare for whatever that's going to be. In terms of what his brothers put him through, the trauma that he experienced, it's not possible to recover from that humanly, impossible. If you read the Chazal, when he was taken out of the pit and sold to the Arabs, what did they sell him for? For 20 silver coins. That's what they sold him for. So the Medrash asks, Yosef is the most beautiful human being ever to live. And what he fetched such a small amount of money? He should have been sold for a king's ransom. Why did he get so little? The answer is, as it says, when he was in that pit, it was a snake pit. The brothers didn't realize that in the walls of the pit, there were snakes and scorpions. Because if they would have realized it was a snake pit, they would have realized he's a tzaddik. There's no way he could have survived it. But Yosef, when he came out of that pit, he looked like a corpse. He was so traumatized and terrified, he looked like a corpse. So when they sold him, they pulled him out of the pit. He had no semblance of anything which he was. That's the reason why he fetched such a small amount of money. That just tells you what kind of trauma he experienced. After he experienced that trauma, even now that you're in the position of viceroy, you can't forget what your brothers did. So how could I be fully dedicated to prepare for my family if that's what my family's all about? You know what happened? A miracle happened. It's as if he had amnesia. Whatever he experienced in his father's home, it's like it never happened. And he only had positive feelings. How's that possible? That's Menashe. That's to continuously re-emphasize and reiterate. Now you're ready to go. That was a confirmation on his mission. And the mission is he has to succeed to the nth degree. Because only then will Klal Yisrael be secure in this lengthy exile until they go to Sinai. Kale is the name of Hashem. Kale means power. Elokim is the plural of Kale. That means almighty. Elokim is almighty. That's what it means. Of course, Kale is mighty. Elokim is the plural. That's almighty. So when he's speaking to Paro, this is not speaking about a detailed ability. This is the totality over here that's causing this to happen. That's what he's communicating to Paro. But he doesn't believe in Almighty. And the angels are only the agents of God. He believes each one is independent of the other. Doesn't make a difference. Yosef speaking his piece, his position.
But I guess what you could see though that Paro does believe in gods. Multiple.
Every pagan believes in gods. But they're called false gods. They're alien gods.
So they believe in God. So why are they considered afar as only physicality?
Because these powers are only to address the physicality of the world.
So there's
no such thing as eternity. You understand? God is unlimited. God is what we call Ein Sof. God's infinite. Everything is finite. An angel's finite. Therefore, if angels dictate, control existence, the value of existence is all finite. Its value is finite. But if God's the one who dictates every aspect of existence, that means this finite existence has relevance to the infinite. You follow what I'm saying?
I'm sorry, and so that's the, amongst others, that's the distinction between believers and non-believers, that God is infinite.
Correct. That's the difference between paganism and monotheism.
And infinite meaning that there's
no beginning, there's no end. Like we say, one of the tenets of Jewish belief is what? Ato Rishon Ato Achro. You're the first, you're the last. What preceded God? Nothing.
In our limited understanding, though, that's not at least from a logic perspective, that doesn't mean he may be the first and the last, and we'll all agree on that. But no, that doesn't necessarily...
Nothing preceded him. Where did God come from? Science, they speak about the Big Bang. But what caused the Big Bang?
Totally get that. As it relates to, though, our existence, that doesn't mean that we or our souls need to be infinite or
no.
connected to eternity.
We become part of the infinite. The whole concept is that if you succeed in utilizing the finite as God dictates you should, and make the right choices, you have a relationship with the infinite. And having a relationship with the infinite means that's the ultimate level of goodness, and that was the objective of creation. And that's what David says in Tehillim, Olam Chesed Yiboneh. The ultimate chesed is that we should have relevance to the absolute goodness, which is God himself. That's what cleaving to that entity.
Isn't that our neshama? Our neshama is
neshama cleaves to, yes.
Right. So when Hashem gives us our neshama, we all automatically have that connection.
No. We have relevance to it. It's in a potential state.
So it's
you
all
forfeit it, or you could expand it. You could make, if you utilize it properly, you're worthy. Then you advance. You connect. But potentially you could connect. A non-Jew doesn't have the potential to connect. He has to create that. That's Chasidi Umas Olam. It's a whole different level of Olam Haba for a non-Jew than a Jew.